Great. Welcome to the March Educator Excellence Committee meeting. And we are today going through the agenda of identifying committee priorities and work streams, setting a meeting cadence, and identifying next steps prior to the next meeting. And I am joined by Representative Williams and Jen from our team. And would like to start by proposing that this committee really hone in on identifying a priority from our past work on teacher retention and taking our meetings and the time between our meetings to really drive that all the way through. I am very excited and proud of the work that my former colleagues and my predecessors on the board launched with this three different teacher retention reports that they commissioned by Mary Levy, including 2018 teacher turnover report that highlighted how the reasons for higher turnover in schools with greater populations of at-risk students. And in this, recommendations included establishing a comprehensive publicly accessible database on teacher and principal turnover, a 2020 teacher attrition survey that explored the reasons behind teacher departures, and the key findings here indicated that DCPS teachers often cited the impact evaluation system as a primary reason for leaving, while public charter school teachers pointed to work culture and workload, and this also included recommendations, and then a 2021 teacher attrition update, which noted a slight decrease in teacher attrition rates, but reaffirmed the ongoing challenge, right? And called for continued efforts to understand and address the underlying causes for teacher departures. I had asked the committee members to look through these reports and name some of the recommendations that we would like to really hone in on as a committee this year and move forward. And so I'll pause there, and Representative Williams, if you have more context to add as we get started, and any particular things as you read through observations and insights and recommendations of how to prioritize amongst the recommendations, that would be super.
Yes, thank you, Representative Chang. And I think that was a good summary of where we sit on this work, and also a good focus for our committee. Just to remind everyone, this is a continuing focus for the board. And the previous iteration of this committee was also focused on one of the 5 recommendations in Mary Levy's 2020 report, which looked at adopting and improving mentorship programs and induction programs, particularly for newer teachers, to support all teachers in growing, being skillful for students' benefits, and for ultimately being able to improve satisfaction and staying in the classroom. So I'm fully on board with being able to hone in on that work. I think it's work that was developed over decades of expertise.
Yep.
And also is work that is needed to strengthen school culture, to strengthen the professionalization and efficacy of teachers, and ultimately to improve students' experiences and outcomes in our schools. So I think there are a variety of things we could look at there, but ultimately have some preferences around what I think would be most effective, and also some things that I think are not budgetary that we could also advocate for legislatively in the upcoming budget session after things move forward at the council.
I really like that, and as you know, that's one of the most proven evidence-based ways to improve literacy outcomes, right? And so, would you, as a current experienced teacher, elaborate a bit more on what the recommendation is, and what you might suggest we could do to get started there, or what you know has already been done around that issue?
Yeah, so I think there's a variety of things, and there are also very different circumstances in the charter sector versus in DCPS.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one concrete step that I would want to propose for this committee the next time we meet, and we can, happy to develop a time today, is to invite teachers to weigh in on what the standards should be for supporting new teacher growth in the city's proposed teacher induction proposal. So I think that could be a partnership with the WTU, that could be a partnership with Empower Ed. We could push this out to the PCSB. But I think it would be great to hear from committed teachers as to the things that they need, so that we are using teacher experience to be able to drive policy. And there's a variety of things that are in the report that have still not been fully legislated. For instance, we still do not have exit surveys for the charter sector. That is something that council members have shown interest in, but not kind of taken across the finish line. That's one small thing that I think we could advocate for. That would have a big impact in painting a clearer picture for where we are at with retaining teachers. And then I think there are a couple other just structural issues with regards to the dashboard piece, and improving transparency around teacher retention that I think would also be good. But the second recommendation, I think, is the one that this committee has already been working on, that there's interest behind, and that I think we could really hone in on to be able to elevate and implement.
Great. So I'm looking at recommendation 2, which is develop mentoring programs for teachers at all schools. Is that the one?
Yes. And I think there's still room for flexibility here. Like, I don't think that we need to prescribe something particular. I think we need to just make sure that schools have a clear plan in place and to recommend standards or best practices that can help guide that work.
Okay. I also like the idea of starting by talking with teachers. So I think, Jen, if we could get the team's help to think through, where could we find some teachers to bring into the next committee meeting so we could ask some questions about what kind of support they got when they joined as a new teacher, what kind of support they wish they had, and where they eventually may have found it, as well as recommendations for the kinds of mentoring support that they would like to see for new teachers. That would be, and actually all teachers, that would be great. And I think that's a great starting point for this committee. I think if we were to build this out, how many committee meetings do we have before this committee is, is done?
Well, typically you all continue the committee meetings through the end of the calendar year. And then in January, the state board elects potentially new leadership. And that's when you all start having conversations about whether the committee structure and membership should change as well. So I would say at least through December or January, depending on, where things align with just the state board calendar in general.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just thinking Jen, I think the main thing to note from this meeting is that we've decided on number 2 to hone in on. And for anyone listening in the public, it's not totally out of the blue. Vice President Williams and I have talked about this previously. But I think what I would propose is that we take this next meeting to listen and learn from teachers. I would love to take the May meeting to do a landscape scan and look at some of the national best practices on this kind of mentorship. I would love to take June to look at the current state in DC. What other mentorship programs do we currently offer, and how are they going? July to look at how we would design this mentoring framework for DC. let's say July and April, since that's the bulk of the work, and or July and August. And then I think, some from there, think, September through December on how do we design a accountability framework for what we're proposing to know that it's working and to assess it, and then really spend the time to build buy-in, right? Who do we need to get on board? Do some stakeholder mapping, messaging, outreach planning, and then ideally in the last month of the year, kind of finalize the recommendations into some kind of a report that we could send over to really make that happen. Vice President Williams, how does that kind of draft framework sound to you?
I think it sounds great. I think that if we get clear, as to what the vision for this looks like at a practical level, and develop the standards that are not necessarily prescriptive but descriptive, and are then able to get the stakeholder buy-in, like you're saying, then I think, to me, the goal should be for the following school year to be able to try to implement an improvement plan citywide in both sectors.
I like it.
And that could drive some real change. I mean, for the public as well, and this is deeply concerning to me as both an educator and a community member, is when I was at my DCPS orientation this year, 1/4 of all the new teachers to the District of Columbia Public Schools were not just new teachers to DCPS, they were in their first year of teaching.
Right.
So, this is something that this committee is building off of the work of the previous committee and making sure that all of these new teachers have support so that we don't see the same level of churn in our schools, and to ensure that all students have an effective teacher in front of them.
And I actually like that, right? Because actually Mary Levy's recommendations weren't just about new teachers. I like the honing in on new teachers. Representative Williams, if you agree that that's actually the focal point of all of these conversations and recommendations. So like drawing out a landscape of teacher feedback, what's happening, what's going on elsewhere, what could we do to improve how we support and mentor new teachers as they come in across the city, as our kind of final product for this committee would be super to me. Does that sound right to you?
I think it does. I think that the thing that is tied with that doesn't necessarily exclude veteran teachers, but treats them or defines the role of them in this work, is that the recommendation also focuses on mentoring. And so how do we not just think about what school leaders need to do, but how do veteran teachers with considerable skills and experience also play into this? So I think that there are different roles for different levels of experience. And what we've seen, right, is that when professional development is differentiated, it's most effective. So not prescribing a one size fits all solution for all teachers, irrespective of their experience level.
Great. I like that. So Jen, what would you need from us to be able to convene some teachers for the next committee meeting and prepare them for having this conversation with us?
I would say decide on a date for that meeting. If you want to stick with the last Monday of the month, that would bring you to April 28th. I would say
Does that work for you, Vice President Williams?
I
think it does. That's not the first week back from spring break, correct? That's the week after.
Yeah, because spring break is the 14th through, for DCPS at least, the 14th through the 18th.
That works for me. If we could get your help, Jen, to set that as a recurring meeting. And I think then the homework for the committee members would be to suggest some teachers. I mean, Rep. Williams, who would you recommend? I mean, maybe it's teachers, maybe it's actually Scott.
Yeah, I think Rick Giatta and Power Ed would be a great start. They have teachers that are representative of both sectors and all experience levels. So I think that would be a great place to start as just an initial interest group. It doesn't mean we can't expand after that. But I think they are would be well situated for this. I also think that just like, even if we could propose a meeting time change, I don't know if, well, 5's probably fine. I was just thinking about teacher schedules and potentially moving to like 4:30 right after school, but some teachers need to pick up children and move location, so 5 should work too.
Would you all, I mean, I'm happy to reach out to Scott as well, but I know you're also close with him, so I'm,
Rep Williams, I think you are, since as an Empower Ed member yourself, would you be willing to?
So I have already talked with him and he's on board. I think just
Great.
in terms of making it official, it'd be best coming from
Great.
Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
I was at the Black Swan Academy event this past week and floated the idea with many Empower Ed teachers, and they had already off the top of their heads many practical ideas that could be helpful.
Great. So really honing in, what I would like to ask the teachers who join us at the next committee meeting is really honing in on this very specific question around what support did you get when you first started teaching, and what support would you recommend or have liked to have received in your first year of teaching, right? And I think that'll be a full conversation. Rep Williams, do you think it's
I think it's good to say
multiple?
limited in scope. I think I sometimes get a little overly ambitious. So the only other thing I would say is like, what standards of practice should teachers be able to reach in their first couple years of teaching?
Yeah.
You know, or like even what areas of practice might we target? You know, are we like, you know, are we identifying that classroom management as something? Because if you know a classroom isn't managed properly, it takes away from student learning. Are we talking
Sure.
about lesson planning? Are we talking about instruction? You know, just like getting some focus about what areas of practice teachers feel they need the most support or would be most beneficial.
Okay.
I'm also wondering, and I don't, just throwing this out there. I know that Empower Ed has particular monthly meetings, and I wonder if it would be well received if we were also able to kind of push into one of their already regular scheduled sessions if they had time for that, just so we could ensure a broader audience or broader focus group.
Yep.
So if that were something that we'd be open to, we could find out when that is and then go from there.
Yeah. I want a balance between essentially getting a download right now as we get started, what we can read, and then what we're asking for feedback on once we have something, right? So I think for this initial piece, if there's also anything, Jen, you could ask from Scott if they've already prepared as homework for all of us to read, so we're making the most of our time talking to the educators that come. And I don't think we want to have too many folks who come. I mean, our meetings, together, I think are generally precious time to really kind of elaborate on points. So even if it's, I wonder, Rep Williams, how we could get some things to be sent over to us in writing, actually, so we can review it and then have a couple folks join us so we could ask some questions about what was sent during the actual committee meeting would be super. But Jen, I'd love your help to kind of arrange whatever we could get there to make it as efficient as possible.
yep, I'm happy to do that, and
Great.
appreciate the committee's patience as well, knowing that I'm also hiring and onboarding over the next month or so. But yes, we can still, especially knowing Scott and how great he is to work with, we can get that done.
Super. And preparing for the next one then, because it might take a little longer to get some state experts on board, is looking at having someone from just in the pipeline, someone from the policy team looking at what are other states doing around first year teacher mentorship, right? If that's what we're now selecting to be as our priority.
We did have some of this information in the previous iteration of the committee, the resolution ended up being passed in December of 2024. I'm going to definitely lean on that. I might reach out to Learning Policy Institute again for some of their connections in other states as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And I'm excited to work on this and drive this through.
Yeah, I think this is focused, and I like how it's issue based, and I like how it's a significant issue. So I appreciate the leadership and the support. And Jen, I'm glad that you have the continuity as well with regards to the past version of this committee, and now also continuing in a similar action-oriented direction.
Thank you, Jen. Please let us know if you need anything from us as you kind of prepare for the next committee meeting, and appreciate your help to update Representative Henderson and what we discussed.
Yeah, we'll do. I'll send a follow-up email to the whole committee afterwards as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.